NFL offseason officially underway, but because we are desperate to always talk about the NFL, we do have our eyes on free agents, but we could see some massive trades that would shake things up. Now, we have 5 potential trades. Obviously, you're seeing kind of some other stuff go down here, but 5 trades we are going to talk about, including could the Jets find their next quarterback in Kyler Murray? So let's welcome in Tyler Sullivan and John Breach. We have come up with these. Our producer Tito has come up with them. You guys get to react to them. So Tyler, I'm going to start with you. What would you think about the Jets making a trade for Kyler Murray? We don't know if we've seen his ceiling. Hopefully not, given the way things have gone in Arizona so far.
Yeah, I mean, he was limited to, 5 games last year due to injury. He's someone that, yes, hasn't lived up to that expectation. But I think from a Jets standpoint, you're kind of desperate, right? Like, the second Dante Moore decided to go back to Oregon, you're sitting there with the number 2 overall pick. You're like, okay, what are we going to do now at quarterback? So I do think you have to explore this option, especially, I think we have to put it into the context of Aaron Glenn basically gutted his entire staff. And what that tells me is that this head coach is on the hot seat. And the easiest way to get yourself off of the hot seat is to win football games. And I don't know if a quarterback that you can find on the free agent market is really going to move the needle for you to win those games. Kyler Murray, on the other hand, if he's fully healthy and can play up to that talent level with a guy like Garrett Wilson throwing him the football, him throwing him the football, that to me would make some sense. And from the Arizona Cardinals, you're hiring a new head coach. You're basically restarting. So it does make sense from that standpoint, especially if you trade him, you clear a ton of cap space. So from the Cardinals standpoint, it makes sense, and the Jets may be desperate enough to do it.
And let's not forget, the Jets, I'm glad you mentioned desperation, because that's exactly what the Jets are. Tyler, they have tried everything at quarterback. So why not take a flyer on Kyler Murray? Go back to 2020. They have had 10 different starting quarterbacks over the past 5 years. You can go back to the Sam Darnold era. Excuse me, Tyrod Taylor, Brady Cook. They signed Justin Fields last offseason. All they do is add quarterbacks. And it does seem like Kyler Murray is maybe someone who could possibly find success. And I use a lot of the words there because no quarterback has been successful there over the past few years. But you look at Frank Reich as the offensive coordinator. He's someone who is good at finding a quarterback skill set and then developing an offense that can work for them. So I think in that sense, Kyler Murray could work in New York, and a change of scenery is absolutely something he needs. You mentioned this is good for the Cardinals because of the cap space. Mike LaFleur is probably going to want his own quarterback, and if you're Aaron Glenn, you're fully on board with this because this gives you plausible deniability. If Murray's good, you look good as a coach. If he's bad, you blame the front office for bringing Murray in. It's win-win for Aaron Glenn. So the Jets do need to try something different, and I think bringing in Kyler Murray would make some sense.
Win-win, but what about the contract, Tyler? I'm seeing a lot of people saying that his trade value would actually be pretty low given his hefty contract. What would that trade value be, and how would the Jets feel about the money?
Well, that's part of it, right? I mean, I think when we look at these quarterbacks that get available, you're like, okay, it's going to cost first-round picks, this, that, and the other. Not the case here with Kyler Murray. You're talking about someone who signed a $200-something million deal not that long ago. So a team is going to be on the hook for a pretty healthy sum over the next few years. So, you know, if you're the Cardinals, yeah, you want to get out from under that, like Breacher's just saying. $37 million you would clear if you trade him. For the Jets, you have to be okay with taking that on. And we both kind of alluded to it. You're desperate enough. So in terms of what you would have to give back, I don't know, is that like a 4th-round pick, 5th-round pick? Just because you also are taking on that massive contract. Yes, you may be upgrading at quarterback, but it's something that is really going to hamstring you over the next few years in terms of the contract.
That sound was my water bottle falling, which also is the sound of Kyler Murray's contract being so big. All right, let's go to the Ravens here. John, I'm going to start with you because you're wearing purple, so it feels appropriate right now. Look, Lamar Jackson's their future. They made that very clear. They got to build up the pieces around him. So the trade would be DJ Moore, wide receiver from the Bears. I will tell you that Bears fans have been flipping out that he could potentially get traded.
Yeah, Bears fans would probably hate this trade, but if you're Chicago and you're looking toward the future, it's not that crazy. I mean, you look at what the Bears have done over the past few years. They have young receivers in Luther Burden and Rome Odunze, so you have guys to build around. And if you unload DJ Moore, now you pick up a lot of salary cap space and you focus on developing those young receivers. If you're Baltimore, this makes sense because you're thinking, look, we know we have one receiver in Zay Flowers, but they really don't have anyone behind that. Yes, they have Mark Andrews at tight end, but if we were speaking of receivers, you really want to have a 1-2 punch, which they just don't have. Not to mention DeAndre Hopkins, Isaiah Likely, both likely going to leave in free agency. So that means the Ravens are going to be losing 2 of their top 4 pass catchers from last season. And one other reason this could make a little bit of sense for Baltimore, let's not forget who their new offensive coordinator is, Declan Doyle, who was the OC in Chicago last season. So he has already worked with DJ Moore for a year. Maybe Moore would be up for a reunion in Baltimore. So he's someone who I think could fit in a new Ravens offense right away.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Breach. I mean, I think that, again, there's familiarity with the coaching staff, but also from a Chicago standpoint, you have all of these young and up-and-coming pass catchers, and I use pass catchers on purpose because you have Colston Loveland there as well. I want those targets to start going even more to the young tight end because he was sensational down the stretch. And again, not to mention Luther Burden and Rome Odunze. There's a lot of weapons already in place for Caleb Williams that it does make someone like DJ more expendable. So if you can get some value and clear some money to continue this ascent under Ben Johnson going into year 2 as head coach, I think that makes all the sense in the world, especially when there's been some effort questions with DJ Moore in terms of running his routes and kind of giving up on routes. I don't know if that's necessarily something that Ben Johnson would particularly love, but on the flip side here with the Baltimore Ravens, and Breach, you touched on it, this is a team that just needs more weapons. Yeah, you could lose Isaiah Likely, you could lose DeAndre Hopkins in free agency, but even if you had them, I would say go for it. Why not? This is an AFC that continues to be wide open. The path was there for the New England Patriots just because a guy like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, they just weren't in his way. Next year is not going to be the case. I think all of these teams are coming back, including Baltimore, and you still have Lamar Jackson in his prime. Yes, you moved on from Harbaugh, you brought in Minter, but you're trying to maximize what you have in an MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So giving him another weapon to go alongside Zay Flowers and all the rest of them, I think you have to do it at this point in Lamar Jackson's career.
Okay, let's go to another pass catcher here. And because, Tyler, you're wearing black and white, you get the Raiders. Looking at a trade for Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins. They do have the first overall pick, assuming they take Fernando Mendoza. Look, a good weapon for him. Tyler, according to you, what would it mean for both sides?
Well, first of all, Breach is going to hate this because we're talking about getting rid of a Bengals wide receiver, but I actually do like it for both sides. I think, obviously, if you're the Raiders, you're trying to give Fernando Mendoza, who we assume is going to be the #1 overall pick, as many weapons as possible. Already, it's pretty nice with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers in that offense, but they really are a little thin at wide receiver, so I do think bringing in someone like T. Higgins, who has been a 1B over the course of his career, I don't even consider him a secondary option in that offense. He is a legitimate #1 wide receiver. He just happens to be in the shadow of arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL in Jamar Chase. You put him in that offense with Clint Kubiak, we've seen what he was able to do with Jackson Smith and Jigba in terms of a league-leading target share. This is someone who could be heavily involved in that offense. And then if we want to look at it from a Cincinnati Bengals perspective, I kind of didn't like them bringing back T. Higgins last offseason. I thought that they were much better served, obviously signing Jamar Chase. You had to do that. But I kind of liked the idea of letting T. Higgins go, using the money that you were spending on him to address the defense. They ultimately didn't do it, and they had one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Maybe you right that wrong this offseason. You move on from T. Higgins, you get draft capital, you free up some money, and you use all of that to fix the defense. I think that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase should be able to hold down the fort offensively. You use all of that to fix the defense.
Tyler, I am glad you brought up the Bengals defense because the only way they would trade T. Higgins to the Raiders is if Max Crosby was involved in that deal. We saw the Bengals work out that long-term deal with T. Higgins last year. It's a very team-friendly contract, so they would have to get some defensive players in return if they were going to make a deal like this. Joe Burrow loves throwing to Jamar Chase, loves throwing to T. Higgins, and the offense is the only reason they're able to stay in games. So they don't want to give up any weapons because they don't know what their defense is going to look like. But from the Raiders' point of view, if they were able to swing this deal, this would be an absolute steal because we already mentioned Fernando Mendoza. He is almost certainly going to be their starting quarterback. When you have a rookie, you want to make him as comfortable as possible. You mentioned, we already know they have the tight end in Brock Bowers. We know they have the running back in Ashton Genty. We know they have an up-and-coming receiver in Trey Tucker, who had a solid year in 2025, his third year in the league. So really what they need is kind of that number one go-to receiver, make Trey Tucker that number two guy, and Higgins would absolutely fit that bill. So if the Raiders can get a receiver in there, a very productive receiver, a Pro Bowl level receiver, that would help Mendoza a lot, and that would help their offense a lot going into the upcoming season.
Let's stay in the AFC West. The Chiefs, whether it's now or later, they will at some point need a replacement for Travis Kelce. Tyler, how would you feel about Browns tight end David Njoku?
I would like it. I mean, he's already saying goodbye to the Cleveland Browns. Like, he is out of there. So I do think that this makes sense from a Kansas City perspective because, as you referenced, at some point, they're going to be without Travis Kelce. And even if he does come back this year, they need a succession plan at tight end. But really, they need some explosion on offense. You watched the Kansas City Chiefs last year. They just looked like a tired team. I think that was the best way to describe them. No explosion, just tired from, I guess, all of these Super Bowl runs, but they need a new infusion of talent. They need a jolt. And I think that someone like David Njoku could certainly give it to him, a uber athletic tight end. He would really be interesting to see how he fits into Andy Reid's offense. And you look at Patrick Mahomes, he just needs somebody to kind of give that burst to this offense. And yes, he's coming back from the injury, so we'll see how he responds from that. But I do think David Njoku, who has been productive in Cleveland, of all places, you then put him, even with Patrick Mahomes that doesn't have an ACL or whatever, he would be absolutely insane in this offense, so I do like the pairing.
Yeah, and one thing with Patrick Mahomes is we know how much he loves throwing to his tight end. And if you're the Kansas City Chiefs right now, you have to be making that succession plan for Travis Kelce, because even if he comes back for one more season, we can probably be pretty certain he would be done after 2026. So you still need someone there. And you look at the Chiefs' passing game for the past few years, Travis Kelce has led that team in receiving for 4 straight seasons. And I think Tyler hit the nail on the head. You need someone who kind of has a spark, who has that speed, because Kelce was decent for them this past season, but he does look like he's kind of lost a step when it comes to his speed. So you bring in someone like David Njoku, and the truth is, this is actually a great free agency class for tight ends. You're looking at Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Likely, Cade Otton, David Njoku. There are going to be a lot of options out there. So this is the season to do it. And I think the Chiefs have to realize their game plan, their offensive philosophy can't be, you know what, let's just throw Mahomes out there and hope for the best. Because that really felt like what it was this past season. Get him some weapons in there, starting at tight end. And I do think David Njoku would be a solid addition.
Travis Kelce will be 37 years old if he does play the season. David Njoku only 29. All right, one more trade here, and it has to do with the Chiefs, but this time sending somebody away. The proposed trade is sending cornerback Trent McDuffie to the Rams. This is actually something that's been reported a lot potentially on social media. John, I'll start with you here. How do you feel about it for both sides?
Yeah, I would love this deal. When we heard from Les Snead, I think last week, he literally came out and he said that the cornerback position group was going to be something they attacked during the offseason. When Les Snead says that, you better pay attention, because these Rams love to make splashy moves. We already know they made that trade for Matthew Stafford in 2021. They made a trade for Von Miller once. They made a trade for Jalen Ramsey. If there is a spot on the field where they think they can get better, they will make a big trade. They are not afraid to do that. This team hates draft picks. That's why they had that famous motto that involved don't pay attention to draft picks. And the thing is, they have the ammo to make any trade they want, because they do have 2 first-round picks. They have 2 fifth-round picks. They just have picks all over this draft. And obviously, cornerback is a spot where they need to upgrade. Trent McDuffie would be an instant upgrade for them. So, yeah, if the Rams could swing this deal, and obviously this would help Kansas City because they need to get younger, more draft picks, find players, get better. Yeah, I would like this deal for both sides.
Breach, I don't know if it was forget about those picks. I don't think that's exactly what it was, but we'll move on from that. I think that the Rams' perspective, it makes sense. I mean, we just saw the Seattle Seahawks go through a Super Bowl parade, and they're in the NFC West, so you do need to take down the defending champ in what is a high-powered offense, even if they did lose Clint Kubiak just a couple of days ago. So I think from a Rams perspective, this makes sense. You're going up against the 49ers, the Seahawks, the entire NFC. You're trying to win a Super Bowl for as long as you have Matthew Stafford playing at an MVP level. From the Kansas City Chiefs perspective, though, I'm a little dubious on it. McDuffie's still on his fifth-year option in 2026. They have to figure out some sort of contract extension. If they can't do it, then sure, I could see why they would have to make a trade. But they kind of need to look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, what is 2026 going to be? Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is coming off the injury. Is he going to try to play week one? Is this trying to be a Patrick Mahomes full season that you're competing for a Super Bowl? Or do you look at it and say, Patrick, get healthy, rest up a little bit whenever you're healthy to get back. We will bring you back. But 2026 is going to be kind of a transition year where we're going to get our books in order, collect up some assets, and then when 2027, we can move in full bore with all that we collected. Now, if that's the case, then sure, you move on from Trent McDuffie, you get what you can for him, and you really start to reset this next phase of the Patrick Mahomes era. But if Patrick Mahomes is coming back like he says he is, and he's trying to contend for a Super Bowl, you kind of want your number one corner in that secondary.
Since you guys did mention Seattle, we're all done with the trades, by the way. Thanks, little homies. Seattle not letting kids out for school, like, okay or kind of stupid?
What are we doing? Come on. I remember when the Patriots won in 2001, my mom ripped me out of school and said, you're going to this dang parade. So as much as it's on Seattle, mom and dad, parents in Seattle, get your kids out of there. Let's go.
Right? Breach, you
Just
agree?
cancel school. Oh, yeah, this is a no-brainer. You got to cancel school. These parades only happened, the last one they had was 12 years ago, and none of these kids were even born. So it really can be a once-in-a-lifetime unless you live in Boston like Sullivan.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, we feel no sympathies for you, by the way, Tyler. We appreciate your time. You guys have a good rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon. Okay, so projected moves, the recap there. There's a lot of them. Hope you were listening. I'm not going to go through all of them. Kyler Murray potentially going to the Jets. DJ Moore. Bears fans, I know you'll be very, very sad to see that happen. He did post a cryptic message on Instagram.